Okay, I think the stream is back. I restarted everything, and it seems to all be working now. So, fingers crossed. Thank y'all for those of you stuck around. It's going to be probably a smaller crowd because everybody left, but now it's working. And yeah, my RAM was freaking out. This computer's pretty old. It's probably not a great computer for streaming, but we're gonna try to see if we can do this thing. So I'm gonna talk for a little bit and then gonna answer your questions. That's the main focus here. Let me just get one other thing going. Let me know if you can see and hear me. Sorry, this has been frustrating. I'm sorry to waste your time. I know you've got plenty of things you could be doing. So Victor Ulysses is with me till the end. I love it. That's awesome. Very cool. Okay, I think everything is working well. So let's just cross our fingers and try this thing one more time. So I'll be right back.
I'm glad you're here, glad you're alive. This is Astro 225.
Hey everybody, welcome to Ask Joe. This is the second time attempting this episode. Had some major streaming problems, equipment problems actually. Super frustrated. So I called it quits and then was able to kind of restart everything and get it working again. I know this happened a few weeks ago. I'm frustrated. If you're frustrated, I get it. But it leads me to what I want to talk about today, and then we'll get into your questions. So it's so easy to just focus on the negative and the bad things that happen. For example, I think it was my mixer or my software or just my computer. My computer's pretty old. It's a 2011 or 2012 and it's currently 2018, so that's fairly old in computer terms. And it's not really meant to do this live streaming thing, but it works okay and it gets the job done, so I just keep using it because I don't want to go through the hassle of buying a new computer. But it would be easy for me to just freak out and focus on how upset I am that it messed up. And it's okay to be upset about things, but even in the chat, there was one person who was just going on making fun of me that I'm supposed to be teaching people how to use software and I can't even get my software to work. Which, I mean, he or she has a point. I do teach people about doing recording and audio, and I was unable to get it to work. But it's kind of like an email or a video I did earlier this week. Failure is just an event. It's not a person. So if you do something that fails or something you own fails, that has nothing to do with me as a person. The fact that my system stopped working right, that stinks. The fact that I couldn't figure it out for a long second, that stinks as well. But it has nothing to do with who I am. And if anything, I'm kind of proud of the fact that I'm back on here trying to get it to work, and it could fail again. And so the prevailing wisdom is, oh man, if it failed once, it's probably going to fail again. So you better just call it quits. You better not put yourself out there again because you might fail again. And then that would be so much worse than the alternative than just calling it quits and going and working on something else. I have plenty of things to work on. I am so busy. But I've made a commitment to do this episode every week. And as best as my ability, I think I've missed it. Other than being on vacation, I think I've missed it once due to technology a few weeks ago, but otherwise I'm trying to be here because I know you have questions, and I'm really thankful. I'm so thankful for the people who show up here live on a Tuesday afternoon to hang out with me and to ask questions and to talk about audio and to try to get better. So thank you for being here. I wanted to give it at least one more effort, and if it failed, that was fine too, but I just wanted to give it one more fair shake before officially calling it quits for the day. So, but that's the thing though with making music and doing this, right? Like, for example, we had about 110, 120 people on this stream back when it bombed, and they stuck around for a long time, but it didn't work. Now I've got like 25. But these 25 people are here, and I'm still thankful for these 25. And hopefully this will be even a more fun episode because we got less people, so we can go deeper with each one as far as their questions and, getting into things that really are going to help them. So The takeaway, I know I'm talking about myself. It sounds like I'm just patting myself on the back. That's not what I'm trying to do. What I want to do is kind of draw a correlation to what I'm doing here to what a lot of us do in studios. If you're a musician and you make music, there is a screaming voice in your head that says, don't release it until you know it's perfect. Or it might say, you released that one and no one said anything, so definitely don't release anymore. Or you played that show and you sang so out of pitch, you should never play a show again. And what happens is you end up listening to that voice. Even though you may have talent, even though there might be room for improvement, you just listen to the voice and you let the voice dictate everything you do. And that voice is fear. And so you let fear be your taskmaster. You become a slave to the fear and you do what it tells you. Does it keep you safe from big, huge failures in front of a lot of people? Yeah, I guess so. But which is more depressing? To never try anything and so never fail, or to try things and to fail but also to succeed some of the time? To me, the second one is infinitely more fun. My life is so much more enjoyable, even though I wanted to punch a window a minute ago because none of this technology was working. It's just part of the game. And it's funny, in the last month, I've had more pieces of my gear die on me than I have in the last 10 years of having a studio and doing Home Studio Corner. A part of that is I've had most of this gear for probably 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. And equipment just goes bad. Things just go wrong, especially the longer you do it. It should be expected rather than surprising. So that's all I'm trying to say. I'm actually going to skip ahead to your questions because I think I've said everything I want to say here. I normally talk for a few more minutes, but I don't want to talk for a few more minutes. I want to get to your questions. So if you're here on the live stream, there's not as many of you, so I'm really going to rely on you to give me questions, and I will answer them. Hopefully we can go the full 30 minutes. If not, I'm happy to just call this a shorter episode, and I'll edit it down, and all will be well with the world. But I really am thankful that you're here. You're awesome, and I'm excited to continue to go on this journey with you of making music, and I've got a lot of fun things planned for this year. I'm working on a new EP. I've talked about that. I've got just a lot of things going. Boom. Do you hear what's happening right now? Did you hear that? It's doing it again. Can you hear that as well? It's like there's something failing in the software. I don't know if it's in the software or if it's on the mixer itself. Something is dying. Is my latency? Yeah, I don't think it's a buffer thing. I keep it the same always. Yeah, if I can't record it, I'll just stick around and answer your questions, and we'll just not make a recorded episode. No. General. Advanced audio. No changes. Yeah, my buffer size is big. Oh, that is super annoying. Well, let's go questions. This will be an impromptu, weird, not, I can't record because, let me listen to it. It's... That's just ridiculous. Okay. All right, yeah. So let's go. I'm just gonna answer your question. So this is now just a live stream. I'm not recording it. Something is dying, and we will figure it out. Ableton was doing the same thing to you, Trevor. We just need to go back to analog tape. I just need a big old tape machine. I know those had so many more things go wrong, but it's just at this point it's just funny. I'm kind of past being angry. It's just after my big speech about this is why you get back up on the horse again, the horse bucked me off. So let's just do, as long as you can hear me, I will answer every question that comes through until my voice doesn't work anymore. Joshua says, what's your top advice for getting great mic'd guitar amp tones? A lot of it, so the bigger zoom out picture is the guitar has to sound really good first, right? The guitar itself in the room, the amp itself needs to be putting out something that sounds good. I know that's obvious, but a lot of people might be getting a really crappy tone and then thinking they can stick a mic on it and get better sound. That could happen occasionally, but generally you want it to sound amazing, then try to capture that with the microphone. Second thing is, on a guitar amp, moving a microphone even an inch or two can have a big difference. So closer to the cone is going to be brighter, closer to the edge of the circle, the cone, is going to be darker. So you kind of move the mic and you can try different angles, and there's just so many tones you can get just by moving that mic around. Third thing is which microphone you use. An SM57 has been a standard choice for guitar amps, and you absolutely can get good tone with that. I've had a lot of luck with the Cascade Fathead ribbon mic, or just ribbon mics in general. They tend to be not as bright, and they have a nice bigness to them. So the mic itself plays a big difference too. But those are the things I would look at, and I would mess with all of those. You probably are. I'd say just keep doing it. Johnny Fuller's here. What's up, Johnny? Says, when you finish a mix, do you find that it sounds different when starting to master? It's not that it sounds different, but your mastering ears are different than your mixing ears, because in mixing, you're listening for individual track things to change a little bit, and in mastering, you're listening to, you can't go in and turn the kick drum up and down, so you're listening to, okay, is there an EQ that I can do to enhance that sound? So yeah, it's a different perspective. Kind of like if I'm listening to, if I play on someone else's project and I listen to it, if there's two songs and I played on one song and I didn't play on another one, and I'm listening to the two songs back to back, I'm going to pay much more attention to my guitar part on the one I played on, and I'm going to have a harder time hearing the overall mix versus the one I didn't play on. I'm going to listen to it more like a listener, right? So I think it's a lot of it's perspective, and you can train yourself. But yeah, thank you. Yeah, buffer size is not the issue. Thanks for the suggestion. The buffer size is huge. It's just something in the processing. I don't know. The somebody said core audio. I don't know. Before, when it happened, then my mixer did some weird thing too. So how do you decide how in front to mix the vocal? Jeff, that is like the question, right? I go through phases. A lot of it. So the problem, if you're a singer, I think if you're a singer, it makes it a little more difficult to mix vocals because, for example, if I'm singing with in-ear monitors, like live, or even just singing with headphones, I'm going to crank my vocal up above the mix so I can hear it, so I can sing in tune, right? If my vocal's buried in the mix, there's a good chance I'm going to push and sing sharp or sing flat and hold back. So there's a certain level. It can be too loud in the headphone mix, but there's a certain level above the mix that I want my vocal so I can sing well. But in a mix, you don't want the vocal that loud. Nobody wants to hear the vocal that loudly, usually. So then you have to find that spot where it sits right on top of the mix, or depending on the genre, maybe it sits right in the mix. Also depends on which section of the song. I was listening to, I went to that movie, The Greatest Showman, and I was listening to the soundtrack just kind of, because it was more modern production than I expected out of a musical. And that song, the big kind of finale song, the From Now On, starts off, it's really kind of quiet, and Hugh Jackman's voice is way up in your face and big and beefy and like boomy. But then by the end of the song, when he's belting and there's this whole chorus singing with him, he's way back in the mix. You almost can't hear him, and it's not the same relative level as it was at the beginning. So there's that aspect of it too. Certain parts of the song you might want the vocal more up, and then other parts you might want it back. Some of that might be just from bigger productions going to push the vocal back based on how the mix bus compressor is treating the mix. But in general, that can change from spot to spot on the song. So anyway, for me, it's a matter of, I usually probably personally err on it being too loud because I'm a singer and I like to hear the vocals louder. So I try to tuck it to where I want to be able to hear everything, but I don't want to feel like it's separate from everything. So there's a balance. If you get it too low, then I can't make out every word. If I get it too high, then I hear it too clearly and it sounds like it's been laid on top of a mix as opposed to like in the mix. And obviously the big thing there is to listen to a lot of music on whatever system you're mixing on. Listen to professionally mixed songs and really pay attention to the vocal. You'll start to develop a sense or like an instinct for how loud the vocal should be, and then you'll be able to better get there. How do you decide? Oh, I just answered that. Thanks, Jeff. Sorry, Jeff. Benabord says, how do you go about mixing snares? I like snare drum because the mixed version almost never sounds like the raw version of at least the snare drum itself. I like to use fast attack compression on snare a lot. I like to boost the low end and get it really beefy and big, and then occasionally boost the top end, like the 4 to 5K, to get it really like both beefy and snappy. But a lot of how it sounds comes from how I'm mixing the drum bus. I'll compress the drum bus first, so that'll already give me a level of compression. Then if it needs it on the individual track, I'll do more compression and EQ. But it's really varies from mix to mix a lot. How do you back up your song files? I don't do a lot of like proper backup to a separate hard drive. I know I should, I just don't. So sometime last year I signed up for Backblaze. It's a $5 a month subscription that essentially every night, I set it to every night at midnight or 12:30, it backs up everything on this computer and it backs up everything on all the attached hard drives. So if I work on a project and save it, as long as my house doesn't burn down between now and midnight, all those files will be on the cloud. So the problem with backing up to a physical hard drive is that's a good practice and you should do that. But if like your house burns down or there's a flood and everything's destroyed, even if you had 10 copies, if they all got destroyed because they're all in the same physical location, what good does that do you? So some sort of cloud backup is nice, because if my house burns down today, I can contact Backblaze and they'll send me, either let me download or send me a physical hard drive with all my files on them, which is great, especially if I'm in the middle of a project. Obviously, if my house burns down, I've got other problems to worry about, but at least that project I'm 90% done with, right, that I just need to finish, isn't completely gone forever. So that used to not be possible, even like 10 years ago, the upload speeds for your internet weren't there. And it does take a couple weeks for it to back up everything, but then every night it just backs up what's new. So I highly recommend that. I'm not an affiliate of them, although that's probably not a bad idea. But they have worked really well, and they're just so cheap. I use Dropbox as well. Most of my files, just normal files, like for all my spreadsheets and documents and things like that, they're on my computer, but they're also on my Dropbox, in my Dropbox folders. So then all my files are available, but that's separate from backup. Backblaze just backs everything up. So if in a catastrophic event, I can go back and download everything. Clues for recording and mixing mandolin. Mine sounds both thin and dull, more so than live. Mandolin usually responds well, in my experience, to darker mics, so dynamic or even a ribbon, and placement's big. But I like to go thicker because it's just can be a bright, annoying instrument if not done well. Thicker picks too. I know a lot of mandolin players use thicker picks. That might make a big difference as well. Kevin says, in your video, by the way, this isn't a recording. We're just going to stream live, and I'll answer your questions because my technology, if you want to hear, if you're just now joining us, this is what my playback sounds like right now. I don't even know what's happening. Let's see. You know what? The video is still recording, so there may not be an audio version of this podcast, but there'll be maybe a video version. Who knows? It's just, this day has been bananas. Kevin says, in your video a few days ago about voice recording and podcasting, you did not mention using a preamp on the voice. Kevin, you're right. I did not mention that. It's probably an oversight on my point, but that's just kind of a given. I was talking about mixing. So mixing assumes it's already recorded. And then once it's recorded, though, I was talking about what to do after that. Every signal you ever record with a microphone goes through a preamp, right? So the microphone input on your audio interface, or if it just has a XLR input, that's a preamp. Now, there are external preamps like the ones over here that give you like a tube preamp and different sounds, but every microphone, it by definition has to go through a preamp before it's recorded, because otherwise it's too quiet. So I didn't mention it because it's kind of just a given. If you have questions specifically about it, I'm happy to answer those. When going down from, say, 24 to 16-bit, what type of dither do you use? I don't ever dither. I use I do it, but Studio One has the option of whenever exporting and going down in bit rate to automatically apply dither. I select that, and then I go. I really don't think there's any noticeable difference in anything that matters. But I could be wrong. Ian Shepard would be one I would defer you to for that question. Breton says, Nashville is all about the vocal. LA sits back more. As far as the vocal level. Yeah, it depends on the genre for sure. Some stuff is more up front, Some stuff isn't. Hi, Joe. What's the best way to musically ear train to hear manipulate frequencies effectively? There's lots of ways, Bruce. A lot of it is just through repetition and just doing it over and over. But at the same time, if repetition is pointless unless you're repeating the right things, right? If you could just sit down in your studio with an EQ, but if you just don't have a basic understanding of what you're listening for, then it's going to take you a long time to get there. So that's why I recommend, and this is completely self-serving, to learn from someone else who's doing it. So on an apprenticeship, ideally, where you're sitting down with somebody who's doing it. Or the next best thing is courses, right? I've got a course just called Understanding EQ, that a part of that course is ear training. It shows you how to go in and find frequencies, how to listen for frequencies, and then what the different frequency ranges typically are. And once you know that, then you can go put in the repetition. But it's hard to put in the repetition until you know what it is you need to repeat. So that might be something worth checking out. There's lots of YouTube videos too. A lot of it's just seeing it done over and over and slowly starting to pick up that ear, if that makes sense. Robert says, just took delivery of my Studio Live 32. Have you gotten DAW mode working yet? I have not tried it yet. I did try it, and then things didn't work well, so I took it off. I'll go back to it eventually. After today's weirdness, I'm a little hesitant to try anything, but I don't want to bash on anyone. Simon, we tried to go on at 1 o'clock an hour ago, and everything failed. So then I rebooted everything and came back 30 minutes later, and it all failed again. So I'm just answering questions because the recording sounds like this. They're telling me it's a core audio crash, which I don't know what that means because I rebooted the computer. That should have fixed that. So my poor little computer. It's so old. Joe, if you had to pick one guitar and one amp for all genres, go. Probably for all genres, probably a 335 guitar, and then I like my deluxe reverb amp with a pedal board so I can get different distortion sounds. If I couldn't have it, I'd probably have to go with maybe like an AC30 or something if I had to just use the amp tones. But I really like those Fenders if you've got some distortion pedals, overdrive pedals to go in front. Glenn says, I watched you sing with your acoustic outside quite a while ago, and the recording quality seemed way better than just a recording done outside. Do you have any audio mixing tips when video recording? Glenn, good question. That was there's a little camera called the Zoom Q4, I think is what it's called. And it's got this wide-angle lens that I don't love the camera part of it, but it's got these little XY mics that pop up on the top. And they actually sound really good. So all those cover videos that I did a couple years ago, almost all of them were done with that. And then I just took that in, and they're a little bright. So I ran the audio through an EQ, notched out like a 2K range or so that was a little bright, but the rest is pretty much as it was recorded. So yeah, that mic is really great. I wish the camera part of it was better. Like I like the camera, the DSLR I use for all my videos now. I like that camera, and it's got the Rode mic that's fine, but it's not like a musical mic. It's good for talking into. If I could combine the two, that'd be awesome. But yeah, Simon, you're an hour late, but then yes, there's been daylight savings as well. I have problems with mixing acoustic guitar, still sound very poor. Philippe, I just did a series on recording and mixing. I think it was mixing too. Acoustic guitars on my YouTube channel. Go check that out. The short answer is it could be the recordings aren't very good. So you're trying to do something with mixing that's not possible because your recordings aren't very good. I could be wrong, but if the recordings are great, you shouldn't have to work too hard to mix them. That's why I focus so much attention on recording when I'm working on a project. How do you find the balance between overhead and close mics? It's different for every mix. Sometimes I really want the close mics. Sometimes I start with the overheads, and that's my tone, and then I just use the spot mics to fill in a little bit of sound. It's different. Lately, I find myself more going towards having more of the kick and snare spot mics as my tone, and then bringing the overhead in just to balance and bring in some cymbals, which is kind of the more traditional way to look at it. But some songs just overheads and rooms sound amazing, and then you just bring in a couple extra spot mics to fill it out, and you're great. Jason says, do you use any native instruments? And if so, how do you create a multi-timbral setup in Studio One? Sorry, I don't, Jason. I'm not. I love MIDI conceptually. I've used it in the past, but I haven't recorded a MIDI track in years. I would just rather plug in a keyboard and just record it straight in. So I don't know, sorry. What would you keep in mind when you're recording drums in a really small space with a low ceiling? It's totally doable. It's just, it's not going to sound amazing as if you recorded in a really great sounding room. It's going to be hard not to capture that kind of ringing sound of that room. So I would try to get really, really good close mic sounds. So I try to get everything just close. Kick, snare, toms, really close. Overheads, try to get a good, just capture the cymbals well, because the overheads are going to capture a lot of room sound, which is going to be the thing that makes it not sound as great. So I would not try room mics or anything like that. I don't think that makes any sense. You might just lean more heavily on spot mics and not as much on the overheads, because of this, the room's not going to sound that great. You can get a great recording. It's just small rooms, low ceilings. You're going to hear that in the overheads, and it's generally not terribly pleasant. So if you think of overheads as mainly just going to be giving you cymbal sounds, and then force yourself to get kick, snare, and tom sounding really great by themselves, you'll probably be in great shape. Hey, Joe, I can't find a Vox AC4 cab online, only the head. Mostly want it because it looks cool. It does look cool. I have not played that thing in years, but it sits over there looking pretty. Tips on mixing tracks from Easy Drummer. I mean, mixing sample drums versus mixing real drums, I take the same approach. It's just sample drums usually already sound kind of mixed. So in some ways your hands are tied because you can't go in and EQ and compress the snare like you'd want to because it's already been EQ'd and compressed. But in general, I find Easy Drummer is still fairly raw sounding. So I'd mix it the same way I mix anything else. Listen, and then make decisions based on what I heard from listening. Basilio, there will not be something to rewatch because we have had catastrophic technology failure. The recording isn't working because it sounds like this. It's not even working now. Listen to that. Literally, you should be hearing sound right now. Oh, boy. You gotta love technology. Am I Leroy? Leroy, go to the... Press the live button. Leroy's back like an hour ago. All right, I think I've gone through all the questions. I don't even know if you can hear me anymore. So my mixer seems to be working. Studio One seems to be working. But then the something in between. I saw you guys saying Core Audio is the problem. Maybe that's right. What are your favorite small, affordable guitar amps? I do like that AC4. It does a very specific mid-rangey sound. And that's it. But it's not really versatile. I like Fender amps. I haven't played much. I've played an Orange, like a Tiny Terror, like once, and I thought it was cool. I just don't go out and play a lot of amps. It's honestly, the 11 rack would be my choice if you had like $300 to spend and needed a good amp sound. It gives you a lot of different sounds for $300 that sound pretty good when it's working. Joel says, hey, Joe, you have a new .com. Simon, you said you love me so much. I love you, too. Thank you. Jason, you're welcome for the Q&A. Sorry, Joel said, you have a new .com for about everything you post. How many domains do you own these days? Do you manage them through a service? I probably own about 30 or 40, maybe. Maybe more. I manage them on a couple different systems. It's wherever you buy the domain usually is where I manage it. So I've got some originally on Bluehost, which is where I hosted Home Studio Corner for years until I outgrew it. And then I switched to another server company. So then I still manage the domains through Bluehost. And then all the domains I've bought in the last several years, I buy through namecheap.com. And then I can just go in there. I'm literally just, for the most part, it just makes it easier for me to say, hey, go to 5stepmix.com, which I own the 5 with the number 5 and 5 with the spelled out. And then just go in there and tell it to redirect to a page that lets you sign up for it. Versus saying, go to homestudiocorner.com/5stepmix. It's not that much harder, but it's a little bit easier, right? Especially if you're thinking, unless you're clicking directly on the link, you're somewhere else and you remember, oh yeah, I want to check out Joe's 5-step mix. Was that 5stepmix.com? Oh yes, it was. Great, here we go. That's kind of the idea behind it. So they're mostly almost just redirects. Johnny, welcome back. We are just doing questions. I don't think this is being recorded because everything hates me. But I'm glad you're here, my friend. And Johnny, we got to hang out in person. I know we say that a lot, but I don't know how and when, but I got enough folks that I need to see just in Britain alone. So we need to make that happen. Or maybe just a Scotland trip. Tell Ian Shepherd to come on over. Have you recorded AC4 impulses? No, I don't have anything that records impulses, like a Kemper. If I did, I guess I probably would. I don't know. That sounds like one of those things I would always want to do but never actually do. Why are so few people using Studio One? You know, Peter, interesting. I don't know if PreSonus would want me to say this, but I don't think they ever even intended for it to be such a big contender. Years ago, if you bought like a PreSonus audio box, the only software it came with was Cubase Essential, which was like the free version of Cubase, which is essentially the only kind of option for software to ship with their equipment. And they just wanted something that was more functional, that they had more control over, which is really what had them start with Studio One. And it just actually became like a contender that competes with the big boys, so to speak. But I think a lot of people are changing. I don't think it'll ever overtake Pro Tools necessarily, unless Pro Tools just does really, really stupid stuff. But it's surprising how much of a contender it's become. But I still like Pro Tools. I don't use it. But when I do get a chance to use it at someone else's studio, I do miss it a little bit. It's just there's things about it that I like. But it's funny, there's so many shortcuts that Studio One has that Pro Tools doesn't. Like I can press S for solo to solo a track, or M to mute, or R to record arm. And none of those things happen in Pro Tools. So I'm in Pro Tools hitting buttons that don't do anything. Simon, if I make a Europe trip, of course. I might have more folks in like Sweden and Norway than in England and Scotland. I'm not sure. We'll have to compare. Or maybe I'll just go to both. Red button. I'm glad the advice is helping. Shireel says, when I record an audio track, the other tracks bleed into the audio track. I can't seem to get clean recordings on the audio track. What do you mean other tracks? You mean you're recording a bunch of things at once, like you're on the guitar and someone's on drums and you're getting drum bleed in the guitars? If that's what you're saying, the only two solutions are a booth, an isolation booth, which is expensive, or just record them not at the same time. That would be... but yeah, maybe if the answer is you're recording and you're using the speakers to listen, and you're hearing the speaker, you got to use headphones for recording. So whenever, typical recording, when you ready to record, you turn your speakers off, you turn them down, mute them, and you only listen on headphones. That's how you keep the speakers from getting into the microphone. Yeah, no, I know the live streams are there. It's just, I don't know if I want to promote this crazy bootleg live stream where nothing worked properly, if you catch my drift. Well, if you record it at the same time, I'm not sure how you're getting bleed unless it's from the speakers being on, or maybe your headphones are too loud. Otherwise, I'm not sure what's happening. I've been to NYC once and I loved it. I need to go back. My wife really loved it, like wanted to move there, loved it. Then she looked at real estate. Piotr. You've told me how to say this. I keep forgetting. I'm sorry. What do you think of recording acoustic guitar in stereo? Go watch my video on it. I just posted it like 2 weeks ago. I love recording acoustic guitar in stereo, but only in XY. I don't like spreading the mics out. It gets squirrely. Bruce, you might be right. If you're in Studio One and you've got the crosstalk turned on, when you go, like, if you can see my screen, if I open up the mixer window and under mix effects, if I have console shaper on and have this crosstalk on and turned up, then you'll see every track will bleed on the other tracks. It's some weird setting. I've used it before. I'm not entirely sure if it's helpful, but there you go. Brett, what's the weather like in Nashville? I woke up to snow yesterday, and it melted by lunch, and then today is beautiful. A little cold, though. It's like 32 when I took my kid to school this morning. Yeah, we were covered in snow, and now I have green grass. Lots of green grass. See, look, I have lots of... I don't know if you can see that. Nah, you can't really see that. It's green. It's beautiful. Recording a stereo guitar with one mic, 2 amps. No, I'm not sure what you're saying, Red Button. Stereo electric is tricky because you need a proper splitter devices to get it to 2 amps without there being a lot of buzz. How and when is a good time to use sidechain feature on a compressor? Almost never. I almost never do it. I've occasionally used it to sidechain a delay, so when the vocal is singing, the delay is quiet, and when he stops, the delay comes back up. How can I train myself to stop throwing everything plugins at my mixes to try to make them sound better? I need to calm down. You need to spend more time. Go to 5stepmix.com and read through that. It's like 7 pages. It will, if you follow that, it'll help. The biggest thing you need to do is get your mix, do a mix without touching plugins, only using the levels. And you'll realize you can get it sounding a lot better if you actually take the time to get the levels right. Then you're not having to use crazy plugin settings to get it to do what you want it to do. But it's not easy. It takes a lot of discipline and it takes time. But if you're willing to do it, it's worth it. Sorry, Shireel, I'm not sure what's happening to you. It could be, I don't know. I don't know if it's just bleeding out of the headphones themselves, or if they're open back headphones, like the ones that I use for mixing, they're open, so the sound comes out of them. You need closed headphones, but over a chat like this, it's really hard to really troubleshoot tech support stuff like that. You probably need to call somebody. Do you ever write a song where you felt the vocal melody was too melodic? I don't know. I feel like sometimes I write vocal melodies that aren't melodic enough. But no, never the other. All right, folks, I think I'm done. My voice is tired. I'm going to call it a day. But thank y'all for hanging out here. This will be one of those Q&As that never sees the light of day. But you folks were here, and I appreciate it. So thank you so much. I'll see you around.